And welcome to Bags and Boards. Coming up on tonight's show, I sit down with Brad Talton from Level 99 Games, plus news, new releases, games on Kickstarter, and more. What have we been playing? What games have we picked up lately? Find out tonight on Bags and Boards. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Lance McFarland here with D. Clark. D, how's it going, my man?
Doing well, Lance. Went and checked out Disney's Moana.
Oh,
earlier.
really?
Yeah, that was pretty good. It was surprisingly good, actually.
Did you go by yourself?
Went with a couple of friends.
Okay, cool. So there's been some pretty good wrestling lately.
Yes, there has.
The pay-per-view, did you watch the pay-per-view?
I did. I've not watched anything after Roadblock, but I've watched everything up to Roadblock.
It was all right.
It was solid.
Tag champions, pretty cool. New women's champion, of course. Can't break that Charlotte pay-per-view streak. I thought it was kind of odd that Sasha Banks could hold out in the figure four for 2 minutes and not for 2 more seconds.
Yes. Whoever came up with that idea is an idiot.
Yeah, I agree.
As a person who is trained in certain forms of combat, if you have lasted that long, you're not going to tap with 2 seconds left on the clock. You're just not going to do it.
It's hard to book a good Iron Man match, but they did not do it very well, I don't think.
No,
the match
I didn't.
itself was good. The Iron Man parts of it weren't very good.
I would agree with that.
So anyway, if you're tuning in and you're thinking how did I stumble across this wrestling show? You didn't. You stumbled across a board game show. And if you haven't heard Bags and Boards is a board game review and discussion show here on KXTR 100.7 The Planet, covering everything in today's designer hobby board gaming world. We're on Twitter at bagsandboardstx, at facebook.com/bagsandboards, and at bagsandboardstx@gmail.com. You can find all this info on our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/bagsandboards, plus all of our past reviews and interviews, and our RSS feed address, which allows you to add our show to your podcast catcher. And if you want to listen to full episodes of Bags and Boards, those go up the next day right after the live show. So if you're listening to this live and want to hear the rest of the show, check it out tomorrow, soundcloud.com/bagsandboards. So, D, we're going to get on to the news. We've got a pretty cool interview coming up later on the show. I sat down for a good long while, for about 45 minutes, with Brad Talton Jr. He's the owner, president, operator of Level 99 Games, and also the designer of some games I really love. One of my favorite games ever, the BattleCON series, Pixel Tactics. He designed Noir, Millennium Blades.
Yes.
He's a designer of a lot of great games. So I got to sit down and talk to him about, not only his games and his Kickstarter projects, but also just his design philosophy and his publishing philosophy and things like that. D, we're going to get on to the news. We're going to cover a little bit of news before we get down to the interview that I conducted. So Lookout Games has announced that they're going to be re-releasing Uwe Rosenberg's Le Havre in 2017, and it's going to include all of the promo cards released today and the Le Grand Homo expansion.
This is really excited to me because I am a self-admitted cheapskate.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity for me to pick up Le Havre with the expansions and the promos all in one package.
Yeah.
And it will almost certainly save me a little bit of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really excited about that. Le Havre obviously is a solid game.
Oh, yeah.
Very well reviewed. So if you don't have Le Havre yet, here's a chance to pick up all of it at once.
Yeah, and I got really lucky a couple of years ago at Austin Board Game Bash, and at the flea market got Le Havre and Agricola from one person at once for like $35.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Got both games for $35.
Is it me or
They're
is
the old versions with no ana meeples, or it's all cubes.
Right.
But that doesn't bother me.
No, it doesn't bother me at all. Is it me, or has there been a focus recently, and by recently I mean in the last 3 months, 6 months maybe, of putting out these big boxes with expansions and the base game all together?
Oh, yeah.
It seems like there's been a lot of that recently.
You've seen that, and we're about to talk about more of that in the news, actually.
Yes.
There has been, and, for years now, you've had the Carcassonne big box. And
right.
Other big boxes, but it seems now it's like big box.
Yes.
Box. And we talked last time, the 10th anniversary Stefan Feld games, they're not calling them big boxes.
But they're effectively big boxes.
Yeah, they're even though they're not coming in a giant box, they're going to have the base game and all the expansions included.
Exactly.
Next up in the news, AEG has picked up the rights to release The Captain is Dead, originally released by The Game Crafter in 2014. Do you know what The Game Crafter is?
I have no idea, man.
It's a website where you can go on and release your own game.
Really?
You use the pieces that they have available to put together your own game that you've designed.
Okay.
And essentially what you do is you make it available for sale on their website. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sorry for the phone, everybody. I'm turning it off right now. So you make it available for release on their website, and people can go on and buy it. And some games are huge hits on there. And they're just like, they make each one as they're ordered.
So basically, you make your own rule set and whatnot, and then you use their pieces to design the game and physically put it together. And then you just put I guess you would put a link up and people can go on there and order it.
And you can order one for yourself, so you have forever. A lot of designers use it to make demo copies of games.
Right.
To shop it around to other publishers.
Okay.
So this was released through the Game Crafter in 2014 and is now going to come out from AEG in April 2017 with better components, better art probably. So players have realized their captain is dead and they have to now work together cooperatively to get the engines back online while fighting aliens.
Awesome.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Sounds like a good game. If you're into cooperative games, this game got really solid reviews. So if you're into co-op games, it's got a cool premise, cool plot, right?
Right. Yeah, co-op games. I'm a big fan of co-ops. I know some people who are not.
Yeah.
But the theme is solid as far as, getting my attention, and co-op is always good. Yeah, I'm interested.
Cool. So casualgamingrevolution.com has released a constantly updating interactive map detailing all of the conventions happening in the United States in 2017. It's an amazing resource because from the tiniest conventions to the largest, if you want to know something going on in your area, go check it out. And
That's awesome.
You'll find a convention around you, at least within a couple hours,
That's great.
Yeah.
This is the best news I've heard today.
Oh, no, it's a really, really cool map, especially if you're like, I'm going to be going to this state on vacation. You never know. There might be something going on around you at that time.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Rio Grande Games is releasing Dominion Big Box in January, containing Dominion 2nd Edition and Dominion Intrigue 2nd Edition. So this is what's interesting, right? Like, they're calling all these things big boxes, and the term big box is like shifting gears, right?
Absolutely.
So this has 2 games in it. When you're talking about Carcassonne Big Box, it would have the base game and like 5 expansions. That's it for the news on Kickstarter right now. This is pretty crazy. Kingdom Death Monster, the 1.5th edition is at $8.1 million of a $100,000 goal with 18 days to go, $250 to get in on the lowest level of the base game, and the lower levels will get you upgrade kits if you have the original Kingdom Death Monster. This is one of those Kickstarters with giant miniatures, 5, 6, 10-inch miniatures, and people love them, man.
I can't do it, man.
Yeah, it's not for me either, but people go nuts for this stuff. I mean, $250, D.
8.1 million. How many copies? How many times is 250 going to 8.1 million? I mean, obviously, some of them are lower level upgrades, but
yeah,
you get my point.
How many awesome games you could get for $250?
A lot.
Ameritrash or Euro or the people who bought this, it's whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, go for it if this is what your deal is. But like, you could have bought all your Christmas presents.
Yeah,
with what was spent on. Yeah. Anyway,
I don't.
So. 1.8, not 1.8 million, 8.1 million.
Yes.
So,
I mean, to each their own. If you got in on this, have fun. By all means. I'm not trying to knock you.
It's supposed to be a pretty decent game if you're into like Ameritrashy stuff too. So if you're interested in at least just seeing the miniatures and stuff, go check it out.
Yeah.
Kingdom Death Monster 1.5th edition. Bags and Boards is brought to you by Game and Movie Traders. Buy, sell, and trade both new and used video games for any console, DVDs and Blu-rays, and comic books. They also feature a selection of board and card games, including Magic the Gathering and other collectible card games. They're located at 2900 West Washington Street, Suite 60, next to the movie theater, and can be reached by calling 965-GAME or online at facebook.com/GameandMovieTradersSville. All right, D, so we're about to get into our interview with D. Brad Talton, Jr., the president of Level 99 Games and the designer of Millennium Blades, the BattleCON series, and a whole lot more. We're going to talk to him right after this.
KXTR 100.7 The Planet, the only station in Stephenville that plays Neon Trees. The Black Keys. And Green Day. Keep it tuned to the planet.
Want to know what I like best about high school sports? I love watching my son run on the field. I love the fact that since he's been playing high school sports, he's making better decisions. And I love knowing that with the proper equipment, education, conditioning, and coaching, high school sports here in Texas are safer than ever before. That's something I really love.
This message presented by the Texas University Interscholastic League and the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association.
All right, welcome back to Bags and Boards. Tonight we're here with D. Brad Talton, the man who is Level 99 Games, the president of Level 99 Games, and the designer of games like BattleCON, Devastation of Endines, War of Endines, Fate of Endines, and so much more. The game Millennium Blades, Pixel Tactics, and a whole lot more. Brad, thank you very much for coming on Bags and Boards tonight to talk about your games, your company, and board games as a whole. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Lance.
Yeah, absolutely. We are excited to have you. We haven't had anyone on the show in a while, and I'm glad it's you. I've been a big fan of yours for a number of years, so I'm glad to talk to you. Brad, I wanted to start off by talking about you as a designer. Your biography on Board Game Geek says that you've been at least thinking and designing games since you were 6 years old. So tell us a little bit about your history with gaming and game design.
Well, I've been playing games since I was very, very young. I got my first Nintendo Entertainment System. I was about 4 years old, and I was always trying to play the next cool game that was coming out. And a lot of times, my parents didn't want to buy games because they were expensive even back then.
Yeah.
They were like $50 even back then, and you could beat them a lot faster too. So, anyways, my parents didn't always want to buy me a new game. And one of the things that my dad and my mom would tell me is, well, why don't you just go make your own with, like, your crayons and your paper and stuff. And so I was like, fine, and I did. And then they would play these games with me. And so that's sort of how I got a taste for designing games, because if I made something and I put all the rules together and everything, then my parents would sit down and play it with me. And if the game worked good and had a lot of fun, then we had a good time. We played it for longer, and that was the way that I spent a lot of time in my youth, getting to know and getting to hang out with my parents. So I guess that it was something I learned, that was learned from a child wanting to spend some time with his mom and dad.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So how did that translate?
College.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say I got to college, and then I learned that designer board games were a thing. And so I didn't even know that people made games for a living until much later on in my life. And then as soon as I realized that, I said, oh, I could make something like this, and I started thinking more seriously about the publication and production side of it.
Yeah, and so how did that translate into, say, designing your first game? Like, how did you come to form Level 99, and what were some of the first titles that got you off the ground?
Well, the opening title for Level 99 Games was BattleCON. War of Endines was our first game. And I had been doing video games on iPhone for a while.
Okay.
My work was as an iPhone contract programmer. And I did a few apps professionally, and I did a few apps on my own. And then then Kickstarter started up, and I saw other companies doing board games on Kickstarter, like starting a brand new company with a initial board game offering on Kickstarter. And I saw Tasty Minstrel's Imminent Domain, their space deck building game, and I said, well, I could do something like this. And so I got together all my artwork. I saved up and bought the art. I did the graphic design all myself, and I put it up on Kickstarter, and I said, look, guys, I've got this fighting card game, and if you think it's cool, back it. And people did, and we got to make it, and it reviewed well. People enjoyed it, and we got to do the second edition of that just last year. We did the sequel the year before, so it's been our first major offering from Level 99 Games, and one of our favorite games ever from within the company.
Yeah, and I was telling you before the interview, BattleCon is it is one of my absolute favorite games, and now I know it's Endines, not Endines, so I will make sure and say that.
I'm not too particular.
Yeah. Brad, I'm from Texas, so I tend to put a little bit of a country flair on things. So, but in Battle of Endines, or Devastation and War of Endines, and you also have Fate of Endines, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all the BattleCon games take place in this same fantasy world, and some of our other games take place there too. The World of Endines, and there's a lot of the Pixel Tactics characters come from there. Characters in Argent, the Consortium, come from there, and it's sort of I call it a mage punk sort of setting. There's magic, there's technology, There's gothic horror. It's really kind of a mishmash of whatever whatever you're looking for in a setting. And so it lets people do a lot of neat crossover stuff with between different genres and with very, very different styles of character design.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really good representation of what a side-scrolling fighting game like Street Fighter or Tekken is like. And that's kind of been, we'll talk about Millennium Blades here in a second, that's kind of been one of your fortes, I guess, is taking another thing and doing the board game version of that. So what's that been like to kind of distill concepts and other hobbies down into a board game?
Well, like I was saying earlier, it comes from my background in design. Doing adaptations of one medium to another. So I started out doing the video games as board games way back when I was a kid, and that's been sort of what's been my strongest suit, is figuring out what makes a game click, and then seeing how I can translate that to a new medium with new mechanics. And so, I devised BattleCON after playing a fighting game called Blaze Blue, which is one of those 2D fighters, got kind of an anime flair to it, and all the fighters had very different ways of fighting. Characters have huge weapons, or a lot of ranged attacks, or every attack can hit from across the screen. You get a lot of variety, but ultimately, a light punch and a heavy punch and a throw all sort of do the same basic function for these characters. And when I saw that the function of the button was separate from its execution, then I devised sort of this styles and bases pairing that made BattleCON work. And so in BattleCON, you take a style card, which represents your character's unique fighting style and their way of doing things, and then you take a base, which is sort of analogous to the button you'd press on the controller, the type of move, heavy punch, throw, block, dodge, etc. And you pair those two things together, and you get a unique attack that is completely original to your character.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what was it like having your first game? Because I wasn't aware that was your first game. What was it like having that first game be so popular with people? I mean, was it surprising? Was it?
Well, it wasn't. BattleCON wasn't an overnight success. It's been out on the market for about 4 years, and in the first year that it came out, we didn't sell a whole lot of it. But we didn't print a whole lot of it either. And so the game really sort of started when we did Devastation, the second game in the series.
Okay.
That was our first really big box game, and it was our first game with full production values, and we could do everything we wanted to do. And so we only made $16,000 on the first BattleCON game, and we put in a lot of my own and my wife's money to make that work. So it probably cost us about twice what we made on Kickstarter to actually produce and ship it.
Okay.
But it worked and people liked it. So when we ran Devastation, the sequel, we actually ended up making $150,000 in pledges for that game, and so that enabled us to do a much bigger and more exciting production with Devastation. And Devastation remains our best-selling game of all time.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. That's interesting. And we'll talk about the production of your games here in a minute, but I also wanted to talk about one of your newer games. And Brad, this game has been a huge hit here we are in Stephenville, Texas, and it's been a huge hit here in Stephenville. I mean, more copies of this game have sold in the local game shop here in town than I think almost anything else that isn't, say, Magic the Gathering, and that's Millennium Blades. So like I said, gamers here love the CCG gameplay mixed with the theme, and on top of everything else, the crazy meta game of actually playing the players of a collectible card game. So what was the inspiration behind this one, and what were the challenges of distilling an entire culture? I mean, CCGs are a culture of their own, so distilling that down into one, albeit very large, board game.
Well, it was quite a challenge, and it took us probably about a year and a half to really get the game into the position we wanted it to be, so that all the gameplay was done. But it was actually inspired by iOS games. If you've ever played, there's a lot of these, like the little trading card games that you can get on iOS, and you play, and every so often you get a few coins, and you can open a pack, and the pack has a new character in it, and then you can put that character into your army and level them up, and eventually trash them, and you get a five-star or 6-star character.
Yeah.
I would say Hearthstone is one example, but even more than that, like the Mobaji games, all the games that come out of Japan. I'm playing one right now called Final Fantasy Exvius.
Okay.
Which is sort of the same thing, but you collect a lot of these little characters, and they're almost like trading cards in a sense, in that a lot of them you just have them to have them, and not because they're any good in a fight. But anyway, I was playing one of those, and I was opening like one of these booster packs that they have, and I got a new character, and I was like this is really, really poor from a gameplay standpoint, but it feels really good as on a human level to just open a pack and collect, and get a thing. You get this new thing that you don't know what to expect or what's coming.
Yeah.
And I realized that what I really enjoyed was that feeling of opening the pack. And I said, well, how can I make a game that is going to capture this element of fun, this element of fun of opening booster packs that nobody has really encapsulated in a board game yet.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, why don't I just make a board game about opening collectible trading card packs? And that's sort of where the inspiration of Millennium Blades started. And it was a long road from there. There were a lot of different things. We wanted to, originally started as just kind of a deck builder where you didn't know what you were buying. That's about as awful as it sounds.
Yeah.
So we eventually moved to getting the entire CCG experience into one game, from tournaments to trading to going to special events to having accessories and collectibles and, building your collection that you can show off to your friends, and even just meeting friends and, and working together with players to win tournaments and stuff. So it sort of all grew out of that one thing. But as you're testing and you kind of get a feel of what people want, you sort of adapt your game to fill the niche that of what people are looking for, what your playtesters are looking for.
Yeah, and
I designed a game for my playtesters.
Okay.
So if they're having fun, then I know that the rest of the people that eventually get the final game will be having fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's been really popular here. I mean, the way the cards look like a booster pack, and the stacks of money that you use to, kind of represent how much you can spend on a game like that. I mean, it does.
Yeah,
really
I was really
work
excited
really well.
to get those money stacks in there.
Yeah, it's fun. It's once you get those things put together, it's a lot of fun. I will say you do and have a penchant for, say, putting a lot of stuff in one box. So where does that come from? Which it's something I love. But what are the ideas behind packing games with so much material? So in Millennium Blades we have a just more and more cards after cards after cards, which is great. It gives it so much replayability. And then in, say, BattleCon, we get a sign that says "Don't panic," right? There's enough stuff in this box. You don't even have to open it all right now. You can open some later. And also different modes of play in your game. You also kind of have a knack for putting different modes of play in the game, so that it's not just the one way you play the game. You can play it in many different ways. So tell us a little bit about that and where you're coming from with those ideas.
Well, a lot of the desire to put more and more content into a game comes from my own sort of philosophy of games. And growing up playing video games, you beat video games and then they're finished and then they're done.
Yeah.
And I believe that the real gameplay of a game exists somewhere between discovery and mastery. Because once you reach mastery, then it's effectively a sport, and the only thing left to do is play competitively to beat other people. But in the space between learning it and solving it, that is where you discover the play, you discover what the game has to offer. You are making new decisions. You're being drawn into the game's world. You haven't figured it out yet, but and I know probably you could attest to me too. Like with sometimes you play a video game or you play a board game even, and you learn it and you get really good at it, and you keep playing it, and all the thematics and all of the skills and abilities and everything else seems to sort of fall away. You understand, I can't ever use this move because this move is strictly better. I can't ever play this character because this character is the better character.
Yeah.
There's not an impetus to discover anymore. You're only playing to win.
Yeah.
And I think at that point that what I love about a game is gone at that point. I want to play and be discovering new stuff all the time. So I try to include enough things that a player won't have to ever play the same game twice if they don't want to. And there's some excitement to playing for mastery, but really playing for discovery and for experience is why I play games. And so it's what I try to bake into my games when I'm building them.
Yeah, and it really is great. I mean, in, say, Devastation of Endines, having ways to play multiplayer and play cooperatively and play 2-on-2, because, that in that sense, it really does feel like a fighting game, because if I'm playing something like Tekken or Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, there are all those different modes of play in there. So, it really does help it to feel like what you're trying to make it feel like.
Yeah, Smash Brothers is a big inspiration for putting a bunch of modes and stuff in the box, because they always give you a ton when you pick up the game of Smash Brothers.
Okay, awesome. So,
but it's a delicate balance. You got to be careful when you put a lot in, because most players are only going to experience each bit of content one time, and so you have to keep your learning curve really low. And so there's a delicate balance to it too, and that's where the art of design comes into play. It's figuring out how interesting you can make something without making it overwhelming.
Okay, yeah, and have you found that also on another side of it? Have you found that the fans of your games want that extra material, even though it may, say, drive a price point up or drive the difficulty of learning the game up?
Well, I think that games are designer games at least are luxury goods. And so
yeah, of course.
The price isn't really an issue for people. Obviously, we want to be reasonable so that people can play the game, and so people can get the game and play it without, spending an arm and a leg. As far as the learning curve, that's more where people are not willing to make to make compromises. You have to, because we don't want to spend a lot of time on learning a play mode and learning all the special rules for play mode if we're only going to play it once or twice. And so you kind of have to balance the expectation of how deep am I going to master this game, and how much startup cost is there going to be to even play it at all. And so with a thing like a boss mode, you may only play it once or twice, so you want to keep the rules as simple as possible. That said, we try and keep them unique too. So a lot of it is in the way that you present things to players, and that's why we have the big "don't panic" thing when you open the box, because there is a lot of content, but we're trying to present it in such a way that the most important content and the content you're going to experience the most is very clear cut, and then all the special content that has little exceptions and extra rules is kind of cordoned off to the side, and you can take it bit by bit as you want it.
Yeah, and also you guys have done a good job of, if you find the BattleCON system interesting and you want to try it, but you don't want to go with that big box of all the different modes, and even at that price, you do have Fate of Endines and War of Endines and, different versions to get in on any level you want to. And real quick, I wanted to let everybody know that Bags and Boards is brought to you by Game and Movie Traders. Game and Movie Traders, located at 2900 West Washington Street, next door to the movie theater, carries a selection of board and card games, including Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and more. They also host groups and tournaments for all of these games, plus Dungeons & Dragons, Warhammer, and more. For more information, they can be reached at 965-GAME or at facebook.com/GameandMovieTradersSville. We'll get back to more with Brad Talton right after this.
Hey y'all, it's Keanu Perez, Mr. TSU, and you're listening to my station, KXTR 100.7 The Planet, the station that bleeds purple.
All right, welcome back to Bags and Boards. If you're just joining us, we're sitting down with D. Brad Talton Jr., the president and owner of Level 99 Games and the designer of some of my favorite games like Millennium Blades and the BattleCON series. From the big boxes full of all kinds of things, we've got, over the years, you've released a line of smaller games like Noir and Pixel Tactics and Cell Swords and Resistor, which have kind of now formed a line of games called the Duelist Library, which includes a newer game of yours called Exceed, and I guess more games to come. So tell us about some of the upcoming games and when we can expect them.
We're working on a lot of stuff these days. Our main time investment right now that Millennium Blades is finished up, is on BattleCON Online and Pixel Tactics Online, and we're trying to move into some digital offerings so that players can play our games, on mobile and against other players at home, and and save a little bit on the Dead Tree editions that we make, because they're unwieldy and producing physical product is a bit messy. So the video games have actually, are actually a bit cheaper to produce, even when you factor in all the extra art programming, than producing box tabletop editions. That said, box tabletop editions sell for a lot more than video games do, especially indie video games, which is what we would be making. So it's a fine balance, and we're trying to strike a balance with both. But we're continuing to do what we call like maintenance releases. We do new BattleCon every year. We do new Pixel Tactics every year. We're going to be doing new characters for Exceed every year, and keeping those alive and keeping organized play going, and serving all of our fans who are invested in those games. We're also trying to do some more big box games in the vein of like Millennium Blades. We want to do something else that's a big, exciting, large box production with lots of stuff and lots of replayability in the box. And the year before, we did Argent. This year, we did Millennium Blades. Next year, we're working on a sort of gothic horror adventure game called Seventh Cross, and it's in sort of this Castlevania / Bloodborne / Dark Souls sort of universe.
Okay.
That we're working on. And you'll get to see a couple of the characters from it in Exceed next season. But it's going to be pretty cool, and it's been interesting because I'm developing it as a cooperative game, and that's a new territory for me.
Yeah. And are there going to be more on the smaller line of games? Are there going to be more in the Duelist Library as well?
We are working on a couple new titles. We have a game called, we have a Cell Swords 2. This one's called Cell Swords Olympus, and it features Greek-themed characters. And it's compatible or standalone with Cell Swords 1.
Okay.
We've just released a couple smaller box games that aren't duelists. They're more players. One is called Anansi and the Box of Stories, and it's a trick-taking game that's based on the Anansim, the African spider tails. And you choose one of the animals that feature in these stories, and you use your different virtues and vices to trick and cajole the other players and try to become the cleverest of all by taking the most cards. And then we have another game called Tomb Trader that's coming out, and this is a negotiation game, and you are all fake archaeologists that have snuck into this tomb to loot it, as much loot as you can, and carry it back and sell it back to society. But the other players, you are all there together, and so you have to basically make deals with the other players about what you're gonna take back and what you're gonna allow other people to take back. And so you only have a minute or so to negotiate this before the tomb collapses and kills everybody. So you have to hurry up and make your deal and get out. And so it's a very, very fun and fast-paced party-style negotiation game. Really small. You can play it on, like a cocktail table, which will make it really good for parties and such.
Okay, awesome.
So we're very excited to have some larger player count games in our upcoming live.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just also had a Kickstarter, and you said you were going to kind of have a game releasing each year for some of your main lines. You just had a Kickstarter in for Trials of Endines, which is it looked to be still taking like post-campaign pledges on Kickstarter. So what can we expect from this set, and when will it be in stores? Is it just going to be more characters or other content added?
So Trials is going to it's not going to add. It's going to add 10 new characters to the BattleCon line. It's the same size as Fate, but we're doing a little bit to improve the presentation of the box. So it's not like lots and lots of content. It's more ephemeral things. Like the game comes with an art book in the box, and it will come with talk boxes for each of the different characters they can store separately. It'll come with improved tokens and improved cards for a lot of the characters.
Okay.
So we're sort of trying to figure out how to, we did all this stuff with BattleCon, and we're trying to figure out sort of how to organize it all together into something we can control a bit better.
Yeah.
So I say with Devastation, if I could do it all again, I would probably take out the bosses and the extra base types and the arenas and all that stuff and put those in a separate box and just give players the characters in the first box.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how we're handling things with Trials and with Wanderers, which will be next year's, or rather next year's BattleCon game, because we're already testing 2 years out. And Trials and Wanderers, and then they will come with, when Wanderers comes out, will come with a extended edition, which will contain a bunch of these extra content, hopefully some new bosses, maybe some new cooperative dungeon modes, some of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we are still committed to all those modes, but we're thinking more about, how do players want to receive this content? Because a lot of people were really overwhelmed by Devastation, or they wish they could have paid less and gotten all the characters for Devastation and then got all the extra modes later. So, a lot of that stuff is the business side and the maintaining the product line side of things, which is not always the exciting game design stuff, but it's a very big part of the industry, is figuring out how to structure your release schedule and how to structure the product in a way that, that works for your fans.
So you mentioned this a little earlier, that you guys are working on online implementations of BattleCon and also Pixel Tactics, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that. I really want to know about BattleCon online. I'm not a big video gamer, but if I could play BattleCon online, I think I definitely would. When can we expect this, and will it be just kind of a video game port of the game, or are there going to be new features because you're able to do it with digital?
Well, I guess so. I should start off by answering your question with a cautionary tale.
Sure.
We kickstarted BattleCon online. I want to say last September.
Okay.
And so maybe even it was a little earlier than that, and we had expected to release last December. And obviously, it's now December 2016. We are over a year behind on this. Video games are a lot harder than in terms of time commitment than board games. And so, with our small team of programmers, we have and artists, we are still in the process of putting it all together. The only release date that I'm announcing anymore is when it's finished. But we are getting very close here in the offices, and we are planning to reopen our closed beta pretty soon.
Okay.
So players will be able to start playing it. Our target platforms are Mac, PC, iOS, and Android.
Okay.
And it will play exactly like the tabletop BattleCon that you know and love, but it will have some characters that aren't available because we can do things that the computer lets us do that the tabletop doesn't.
Yeah.
So, for example, there's one character that when he hits you with an attack, that attack permanently gets better. The numbers on the card change.
Okay.
And that's the sort of thing that you couldn't really do on a tabletop. So we have some characters like that, characters that do different things. And a few characters that we translated from the tabletop that will do things a little bit differently. But it should play pretty similar. We will have some special events. We're hoping to have single-player adventures. We're hoping to have some ranked play and monthly ladders, stuff like that. And there are lots of cool alternate costumes that you can get for your favorite characters.
Okay, and it will be online, like being able to play against other players rather than AI.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that will be our launch version. Will have quick match and hopefully ranked play online against other players.
Okay, great. I am very excited about that. So with online implementations of games like you guys are doing, where do you see the future of the board game industry in relation to digital platforms? Because it seems like something that you've adopted a bit.
I think that that technology will continue to get more involved, and with our games, they're pretty uniquely suited because a lot of the games were inspired by video games.
Yeah.
It's easy to bring them back and keep the turn-based mechanics that we have. That said, the tactile nature of a tabletop game is something that you simply can't replicate online. And so I think that the direction that we will go is more and more towards things like there's a platform now called Playtable that's coming up, and it's got a digital board surface, and it can scan and interact with your game pieces and your dice, and then you can play cards. You can actually hold the cards in your hand and move the pieces around on the board, but the board will change based on the game state. So there's kind of a fusion of technology and tabletop components together. Yeah, I think that is where we are going to be going. Is that we're going to see a lot of more of these things becoming partially digitized. So we're going to see cyborg board games coming out that are part technology or part video game and part board game. And I think it's going to be pretty cool. I, for one, am looking forward to it.
So I also wanted to see, aside from digital, Brad, have you noticed any other trends as either a designer or a publisher this year or last year, recently, or that you may see that are coming in the future?
I think that the big trend right now that we're seeing is the legacy game.
Yeah.
And these, I'm sure you've talked about these before, but like Risk Legacy and now Seafall, Pandemic Legacy, and now there's a new one called Forbidden Fruit that came out from Stronghold Games.
Yeah.
And that's what they call a fable game, where the game is not actually consumed in the playing, but it does change in the playing. And the persistent narrative carrying over from one game to another is something that video games have done for a long time, but that board games have just recently adopted, and RPGs have done it for a long time too. And so it's sort of a mechanic that was always there, but was never fully realized in the same way. And I think that is, that's probably the biggest thing. And I think I'd say about every 5 to 10 years, we have some really big innovation in the industry. Like deck building was the really big thing back in, I want to say, it was like 06 or so, or maybe 05. And then, and now, 10 years later, we've got legacy. So we're probably going to be living with a lot of really good legacy games for about the next, both good and bad, but a lot of legacy games nonetheless.
Yeah,
in
that's
about
true.
the next 5 to 10 years. And then we will see the next sort of zeitgeist take over in board gaming.
Yeah.
Someday, I hope it's a game I invent that makes that big shift. But I don't know. I keep looking for that unique mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with Legacy, you've got, I think it's coming out in 2017 from Artana Games. It's called Chronicles Origins, and it's actually kind of taking it to that next step where each game of a game doesn't just carry over, but Chronicles Origins is going to carry over to Chronicles whatever the next game is.
I see. So now they've implemented the Mass Effect mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they're going to be
pretty cool.
They're going to be completely different games. So this one might be a cooperative game where you're building up characters in, say the Ice Age, and then you take those characters over into, or those types of people over into like the antiquity, so definitely doing different things with it. And with Fabled Fruit from Friedman Freeze doing something different with it as well. But yeah, that's kind of cool. Just like with Dominion in the late aughts doing deck building, and then people take that in all different kinds of directions with games like Paperback, and I mean, you can do all kinds of different things with deck building now. So yeah, people doing that with Legacy as well. So I wanted to ask you, we've talked about you being both a designer and a publisher, but now also a video game or digital game creator. Which of these three is kind of the most challenging, and which takes up the most of your time and energy?
Well, they all take up different brain spaces.
Yeah.
I would say that probably running the company side of things is the most challenging because there's the most at stake. If a particular game you design isn't very good or your digital implementation doesn't get finished on time, then that's not great. But if your business fails, then you kind of lose everything. So the business side is the part you have to be the most careful about, pay the most attention to. But as far as the side that I probably spend the most of my own brain power and time on is probably the board game development side.
Really?
That's what I do. Like after 5 o'clock comes and I am off work, that's what I go and do. I work on the board games because that's what I really have a passion for.
We're going to take a quick break, everybody, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Brad about all of the games he's been playing recently. But before we do that, I wanted to let everybody know that Circle A Skate Shop is inside Game and Movie Traders here in Stephenville, next to the movie theater. They offer skateboards and longboards and carry accessories including trucks, wheels, skate videos, and more. Information at 965-GAME or by searching Circle A Skate Shop, Stephenville on Facebook.
I have an army. We have a Hulk.
And we've got great music here on 100.7 KXTR The Planet.
Okay, so 5 tacos of cheese and a large soda, that's $10,012. Please drive around.
Wait, 10,000 what?
It's obvious you're buzzed and driving.
I've only had a few. I'm fine.
Yeah, the food's $12, but getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Please drive around. Actually, just park and come in.
Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Bags and Boards. If you're just joining us, we are talking with D. Brad Talton Jr., the president and owner of Level 99 Games. So let's talk about games. Brad, I always like to talk with guests about their favorite games. So aside from things going on at Level 99, what are some of your favorite games and some titles that you've enjoyed maybe this year?
So recently, the game I played the most of this year is probably Heroes of the Storm.
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
That is their MOBA offering.
Okay.
And I've been working for a while to try and make a good MOBA board game, but I've not touched on it yet. And I think that there's a lot of things that are intractable just by playing with 9 other players that you can't translate to a board game. Because once you're managing everybody yourself, then it's too much. It's just too much.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. It's certainly a challenge to try and bring that. I really enjoyed Dark Souls 3, and that was a big inspiration for the game that I'm currently working on. I also have been playing Darkest Dungeon for similar reasons. Are you familiar with Darkest Dungeon?
No, I'm not really. I'll be honest with you. I'm not much of I don't know a lot about video games, especially current video games myself. I honestly, Brad, don't even have a video game system at home.
For shame. Well,
I know.
honestly, you've got a cell phone, right? So you've got a video game system there. Played that. I've played. So Darkest Dungeon is a game that's like you have a party of adventurers and you take them into this dungeon and terrible things happen to them.
Okay.
And sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. But if they do come back, then they are changed by the experience, and they start to develop all sorts of quirks and afflictions and stuff. And so part of it is, how much am I going to push these guys before I bring them back? And what do I think I can get away with if I push them? Am I going to get that last bit of treasure and get out alive, or am I going to have to go train a new group of naive heroes to go into the dungeon for me? It's a very fun game, very very nice stylization on it.
And it's on a larger console.
You can play it on Steam,
okay,
or any. You can play it on. I'm playing it on PlayStation 4, but you can also get it on Steam.
Okay.
And that's the one I highly recommend.
Cool.
Folks. I played recently. Seafall is what my gaming group is playing, and we get together every Monday to play through Seafall. Seafall is the legacy game from Plaid Hat.
Yeah.
That's about navigating the oceans and discovering, discovering what's beyond the horizon.
And what have you thought about
fun
Seafall so far? Because, I mean, it was one of those games that everybody was really, really excited about. And I think based on a couple of initial lackluster reviews, it kind of, people just stopped talking about it, it felt like. But it's something I'm definitely still excited about. I think people were excited about the legacy and didn't necessarily think, oh, maybe I'm not a big 4X fan, you know?
I think that you have to kind of approach Seafall the same way you'd approach an RPG campaign.
Yeah.
In the sense that it doesn't matter if you win or lose that much, because it's more about the larger narrative.
Okay.
That said, the game is not especially well balanced from one session to another session. Like one player might do really well in the game on turn 3 in one game, and then another game we might be on turn 15 before somebody finally manages to scratch out that last victory point they needed to end the game.
Okay.
Players who are behind get a way to catch up. Players that are ahead get some penalties, and so it balances out pretty well. I guess the most important thing is you have to play Seafall from an experiential standpoint and not from a, it's a board game, play to win type point.
Yeah, and I think it's
unexpected things will happen, and people just get 5 VPs for no apparent reason.
Yeah,
it's just the nature of discovery.
So really, just taking it in and not worrying about the minutiae of the game.
Yeah, get some friends that you think you could hang out with. 17 times, and plan to hang out for an hour and a half every week and play Seafall, and it's great fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm definitely going to play Seafall at some point because I just want to see the continuation of Rob Davio as a designer of legacy games and just see where this one man is going to go with this concept that he created.
Well, it's pretty cool, but, I don't think, I guess what I'd say is, Donald Vaccarino didn't perfect the deck building game. He just created it. And often the innovators are not the people. The people who create a genre are not often the people who perfect it.
Yeah, and so I'm also ready to see someone else
the other one too.
I'm ready to see someone else do Legacy as well, because that Chronicles Origins game is also co-designed by Rob Davio. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's kind of the only one who's really done it at this point. I'm sure there's some in development right now, but really, as far as the 3 that are out there, it's really one person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Brad, we'll see some more. We'll see some more pretty soon, I'm sure.
Any other board games you've been playing, or what are some of your favorites from years past?
Oh man, well let's see. I'll turn over here to my board game shelf. Take a look. I'm looking forward to playing Feast of Odin. Probably going to try that tonight, actually.
Very jealous.
And it's another Uwe Rosenberg game.
Yeah.
And he makes those like Agricola and Caverna and those sorts of farming builder sort of game. It can be quite a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Summoner Wars. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And Mage Wars. So like you, I play a lot of 2 players. Mostly I just try and play as many new games as I can.
Yeah.
So I don't often stick around to really get really deep into one, but I do try and play as much as I can so that I have, as many mechanics as possible at my disposal when I'm designing.
Brad, it's been a lot of fun. Do you have anything on Kickstarter right now? Like we said, Trials of Indians is still taking pledges, but is there anything currently on Kickstarter for you guys?
Nothing particular that we are doing. We just finished up Mega Man Pixel Tactics, actually.
Okay.
And so that will probably be out in early 2017. So look for that.
So was that another partnership with Jasco Games, kind of like Exceed was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a partnership with Jasco Games, and they licensed Pixel Tactics from us and Mega Man from Capcom. And I saw they have the Mega Man license, and I was like, Jason, we got to do Mega Man Pixel Tactics. It's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Let me make the game. And he said, all right, we'll do it. And So we did it, and it succeeded on Kickstarter, and it'll be coming out pretty soon. So I hope you guys all check that out.
Yeah.
As far as like our next big project, probably going to be the second season of Exceed, which will preview some characters from Seventh Cross, which are upcoming horror adventure game. So you'll be able to actually fight as some of these characters in the Exceed season that we're working on.
Yeah, and we didn't really get a chance to talk about Exceed, but it's from what I've seen of it, it's pretty similar to BattleCon. So tell us what the kind of similarities and differences there are, and where the different focuses are going into both of those different lines.
So BattleCon is very much a board game interpretation of the fighting game genre. So you have characters that have all sorts of wild, specific subsystems and things going on, and there's a lot of different setup, and there's a lot of calculation and watching what your opponent can do and playing around their moves. Whereas with Exceed, we wanted to take a different approach, and we wanted to start as a card game and do a card game adaptation of that genre. So Exceed starts from a deck of cards. You shuffle your deck, you put your guy on the table, and then you're ready to play. And you draw cards, and you play cards, and you move around the board, and mostly you are trying to get a feel for what your opponent is doing, but you don't really have to completely understand everything that's available to them, and in fact, you shouldn't. So I would say that Exceed is more about the experience of the fighting game genre, and BattleCon is more about the mechanics in the fighting game genre. And while they're not very different thematically, they are very different in the target audience. Exceed we designed for Magic and other CCG players, and BattleCon we designed for board gamers.
Okay, so similar but not different games overall.
Yeah, and they have different inspirations as well. Like the mechanics in Exceed were inspired by Flash Duel, which is I'd say not Flash Duel. Flash Duel was also inspired by a game called On Guard by Rainer Nietzsche. So On Guard inspired both Flash Duel and Exceed, and you can kind of see how the mechanics played out in both of those games. Whereas BattleCon is more inspired by a game called Ace of Aces and subsequent Lost Worlds battle books by a guy named Alfred Lenardi.
Okay.
From quite a while ago, and those were like dogfighting games where you played as two planes dogfighting in World War I.
Oh yeah. I've seen those for sure.
Yeah, with the grids at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about that's the matrix behind BattleCon. You can see how it's the same idea, 1v1 combat, but it splits pretty drastically.
Tell our listeners where they can find out more about you and Level 99 Games Online and maybe get in contact with you.
Yeah, well, we're at our website, level99games.com, level99games.com, and you can always find us on Twitter at level99games, and Tumblr and Facebook. We have a fan page as well. So I hope that you follow us and keep up with what we're doing and play some games.
All right. Thanks to D. Brad Talton Jr. from Level 99 Games for coming on the show and talking to us about all kinds of cool stuff. And if you're just joining us, you're listening to Bags and Boards. And Bags and Boards is brought to you by Game and Movie Traders, located at 2900 West Washington Street, next door to the movie theater. Game and Movie Traders does buy, sell, and trade for both used and new video games. They offer both new and classic video games for all systems, including PS4, Xbox One, as well as Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and all consoles in between. Information at 965game or at facebook.com/Game and Movie Traders SVille. So, D, I hope everyone enjoyed the interview. Just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
And we'll see you guys a few days after Christmas, a few days before New Year's, and we'll be talking about Lagrania No Siesta, the dice game from Stronghold Games. And until then, we'll see you guys next time. Be sure and go to our Twitter page at bagsandboardstx, facebook.com/bagsandboards, and soundcloud.com/bagsandboards, where you can find all of our social media information. You can find this episode and any other episode of Bags and Boards, past reviews and interviews, all kinds of cool stuff over there. And D, we'll see you guys next week.
Happy holidays, everybody.